It's fair to say that they do things a little bit differently in the Lone Star State. So it's fitting that teams have turned up in Austin with cars that look a little bit different. Hello you all, as I believe they say around here. It's big upgrade time as we kick off at the Circuit of Americas for the first of 6 races to round out the 2024 Formula One season. The FI are keeping a close eye on aerodynamic parts of the car all year round, but they're keeping an even closer eye, starting in Austin, at the rear wings. Have a look here at the Alpine. You can see the new rear wing that Alpine have introduced here, and I'm picking on Alpine simply because they've put a new livery on, and it's not pink, it's not blue, it's sort of McLaren coloured when you see it on the screens. A little bit confusing, but McLaren have put some chrome bits on the car to make it easier for everybody to tell apart. Also, it just looks kind of cool, doesn't it? What I'm actually drawing everybody's attention to is not the new rear wing, but actually these optical contacts across the rear wing. Now you'll notice Alpine and every other team have got these on the wings this weekend, and they seem a bit more visible. And you'll notice that they're this target shape, which is something quite new. I think that gives the FI a little bit more precision on looking at how rear wings move, or don't move, during the time that the car is out on track. You'll also notice the positioning of these targets is slightly different to the old version. You'll notice there's targets on the wing flap, as well as these little end parts of the wing. And then you'll notice they're doubled up along different parts of the wing as well. Now you compare that to the old specification. Here's the Alpine wing from a couple of races back, and you can see the targets are far simpler. They're just dots, and there are only a few of them, 4 across this wing section at the back. Now you take a look back how it is this weekend, and you can see there's 8 contacts in total across the whole wing. So the FI clearly taking a much closer look at that. And how are they looking at it? Well, using this. This is the spy in the ointment, if you like. And you can see this is the rear-facing onboard camera, the very same one that creates the rear-facing onboard pictures you see on television. Well, the FIA will be downloading this footage from every single car in the field. They'll be putting it into some sort of computer software, measuring the optical contacts and how much they move as the car's out on a run. And that will allow them to determine if a wing is flexing too much or just right. Unexpectedly, with Austin being a sprint, a lot of teams have bought upgrades, but the reason for that is that there's been a bit of an autumn break in Formula One. It's been very nice to have a few weekends off, but unlike the summer break, the teams haven't had to shut down. So all of those brains, the wind tunnels and the CFD has been whirring away, and Red Bull have been making some interesting comments about their wind tunnel. A new wind tunnel apparently is under construction in Milton Keynes, and Christian Horner has been in the press in the last few weeks highlighting some of the issues with the previous wind tunnel they're using, the old Cold War relic. In the British winter, when the temperature drops below a certain level, they can't use the wind tunnel to get accurate data. And in the British summer, which is very short, if it gets too hot, they also can't get reliable data out of that wind tunnel. I think the summer problem is far less of an issue than the winter problem. Of course, new cars are developed all the way through the winter. And if the UK has a cold winter, it's going to hold Red Bull back. At least that was Christian Horner's point of view. And it does sound to be kind of accurate. So it is a little bit difficult for the team to manage that. Despite that, they have introduced some upgrades this weekend, and you can see it just here. It's a little bit subtle on the back of the Red Bull. Look around the Honda logo. You can see the little bulge that they have in the bodywork, and they've had a bulge there all season long. But on this version of the bodywork for Texas, the bulge is just ever so slightly smaller, ever so slightly tighter. If you look at an earlier iteration of the car, look how much bigger the bulge is here. And I think that's all to do with the different cooling levels. In free practice, you saw the Red Bull team liberally applying flow visualization dye around the leading edge of the side pods and into these shoulder coolers as well, because I think they've made quite a lot of changes that we can't see underneath the bodywork to the cooling ducting, and that's something Red Bull hope will deliver a slightly better increase in performance than they've seen in recent races. The team, of course, dropping back through the field a little bit in terms of pace, and certainly in terms of improvement on pace as we've detailed previously. Moving on, Red Bull not the only team with upgrades. Mercedes, they've got some revised front suspension fairings, all to do with managing the flow off the rear wing. Something a lot of teams are doing up and down the pit lane is playing around with these fairings. They're not the structural bit. The bit you see of the front wishbones isn't the bit that holds it all together. That's a bit on the inside that isn't particularly aerodynamic shaped at all. It's just kind of square and ugly. But these parts are very, very neatly done, but that's why the teams are changing them, because it's pretty cheap to change it. Don't forget there's a cost cap and wind tunnel testing restrictions. So these parts exposed to the airflow have a lot of influence on what's going on downstream, and that's why the teams are changing them around so much. But more interestingly, let's have a look at the side pod ducts for Mercedes, because this is a more dramatic change. Now, Mercedes have had this side pod shape for most of the season, kind of similar to Alpine, with this lower section opening up to a wider duct here. But what they've changed for this race is they've moved this lower lip of the side pod duct further rearward. If you remember in previous races, it was kind of in line with the upper edge, but actually coming into this race, they've moved it back slightly, and that's allowed them to reshape a lot of the side pod ducting underneath. You can see how sculpted underneath it is and how much it sticks out as well. You can really see how much they're sculpting the underside of that side pod, how much that is important to managing the flow over the top of the floor and to other parts of the car. That's a really critical part of the car, and to change that is no small job. And I do kind of wonder, has Mercedes changed some of the cooler layout under the bodywork? That's something that doesn't come out of your wind tunnel testing allocation, but this bit where you've changed the external parts absolutely does. So quite a lot of work gone into this. Then moving down to McLaren, they've had a pretty big upgrade in Austin. Is it the big upgrade that they've been holding back? Well, certainly there are parts of it. But to explain a little bit more, let's hear from the team themselves.
We've got new front wing flaps on the front wing. Then the suspension itself has been reprofiled, so the shrouds are reprofiled to suit the new flow structures that are coming off that front wing. The brake duct winglets. We've got a new brake duct winglet, some subtle work with some stays around those winglets as well. Again, working off the front wing to improve the flow structures to the rear of the car. And then as we go further back, there's some small changes around the rear suspension as well, again on the shrouds, just to improve those flow structures to the rear of the car.
Interestingly, McLaren was the team that was linked to a gentle re-entry into Formula One by one of the world's biggest car makers, Toyota. They'd supplied a driver to the team, and there were some technical exchanges going on behind the scenes as well, I believe. However, when the teams arrived in Austin, the Haas rear wing was covered in Toyota branding. Toyota and Haas have done a technical partnership, the details of which I don't think have fully emerged yet, even though the team have just said it involves aerodynamics, mechanical parts and car development. Well, Toyota's facilities in Japan have been heavily upgraded in recent years, and the Toyota facilities are possibly some of the best in the world now. We just don't hear too much about it because it's all the way over in Japan, away from the heartlands of Formula One car development. And I do wonder, is this a beginning, a toe in the water exercise for Toyota to make a full re-entry into Formula One? Well, the Japanese manufacturer has said that it's got no firm plan to do so anytime soon. However, all of this development, all of this work is certainly going to be helping their road car development, and it is great to see another manufacturer name into Formula One. I just do wonder, how long is it before Toyota make a decision to fully jump into and fully commit to Formula One? We'll just have to wait and see if that ever comes to pass.